I never thought I'd be the guy with the perfect life. As a paramedic for 15 years, I've seen too much blood and chaos to believe in fairy tales. My name is Mark Sullivan, and at 44, I've grown accustomed to the weight of other people's tragedies. I've held dying children, comforted elderly widows, and pumped life back into overdosed teenagers. The job hardens you, but there's pride in knowing your hands make a difference. Jennifer came into my life like a quiet revolution. I stumbled into her bookstore on a rainy Tuesday looking for shelter more than literature. She smiled from behind, a stack of historical novels, her dark hair framing intelligent eyes. "Let me guess," she said with an amused tone. "Not a big reader?" I wasn't, but I bought 3 books that day just to hear her recommendations. Our courtship wasn't dramatic or passionate. It was steady, like finding solid ground after years at sea. She wasn't impressed by my uniform or my stories. Instead, she listened when I talked about the toll of midnight shifts and wiped my tears after I lost patients I couldn't save. With Jennifer, I didn't have to be the hero. I could just be Mark. We married in a small ceremony by the lake. Her parents thought she was settling for someone without ambition, a blue-collar guy with blood under his fingernails. Maybe they were right, but Jennifer never seemed to mind. We built our life in a modest 2-story with a garden she tended like it held the secrets of the universe. Every Sunday morning we had a ritual: black coffee for me, Earl Grey for her, and fresh sourdough from the bakery down the street. I'd read the sports section while she devoured literary reviews. Sometimes our knees would touch under the table, and she'd look up with this smile that made me feel like I'd won something precious. We decided early on not to have children. It wasn't a painful choice, more practical than anything. My schedule was unpredictable, and Jennifer loved the freedom of spontaneous weekend trips and quiet evenings. We had each other, and that seemed enough. For 15 years, I thought we were solid. When I worked 24-hour shifts, I imagined her waiting, creating a home that felt like sanctuary. I missed birthdays and anniversaries sometimes, but she never complained. Loyalty was our unspoken promise, the foundation I believed we built on. On long drives home after difficult shifts, doubt occasionally crept in. Did I give enough? Was she lonely in those empty hours while I was elbow-deep in someone else's crisis? Did she resent the calls that pulled me away from dinner, tables, and warm beds? I'd shake those thoughts away because Jennifer always greeted me with that same smile when I walked through the door. We were a team. At least that's what I thought. But betrayal doesn't always send warnings. Sometimes it knocks the air out of your chest in an instant. And when I found out, it nearly killed me. Tuesday shift ended early, a rare gift in my line of work. The day had been brutal. A 3-car pileup on the interstate, a child with a seizure, an elderly man who didn't make it despite 40 minutes of CPR. My shoulders ached from the physical and emotional weight. But I was going home to Jennifer 3 hours ahead of schedule, and that thought alone lightened my step. I stopped at the wine shop near our house. Jennifer loved their locally produced Cabernet, said it tasted like blackberries, and whispered, "Secrets." The bottle was expensive, but I wanted to see her face light up when I presented it. A small apology for all the nights I wasn't there. Our house sat on a quiet street, the kind where neighbors knew each other's names but respected privacy. The maple tree in our front yard had just started turning red at the edges. Jennifer had planted tulip bulbs along the walkway last weekend, promising me a riot of color come spring. I pulled into the driveway at 9:17 p.m. Jennifer's car was there, and so was another, a sleek black Audi I didn't recognize. Probably a friend or one of her book club members, I thought. She hadn't mentioned having company, but then again she didn't expect me home. The front door opened with its familiar creak. The house was dimmer than usual. Just a single lamp lit in the living room, Jennifer's novel abandoned on the coffee table. No voices from the kitchen, no sounds of conversation. "Jen?" I called out, setting the wine on the counter. No answer. That's when I noticed the silence, not the comfortable quiet of our home, but something tense and unnatural. And then, breaking through it, a laugh. Jennifer's laugh, but different somehow, higher, breathier, followed by a low murmur that definitely wasn't female. My body registered the truth before my mind caught up. My stomach twisted into a hard knot. My hands went cold and damp. Something primal in me already knew, even as my conscious mind scrambled for innocent explanations. I stood at the bottom of our staircase, listening. The sounds were unmistakable now, rhythmic creaking, soft moans, Jennifer's voice whispering words I couldn't make out but understood all too well. Each step up the stairs felt like climbing a mountain. My legs were concrete, my chest compressed by an invisible weight. I noticed details with strange clarity. A scuff on the wall I'd meant to paint over, the slight give of the third step that always squeaked unless you knew to avoid it. The family. Photos lining the stairwell, me and Jennifer in happier moments, frozen in time. Halfway up, I saw the first piece of evidence, Jennifer's blouse, discarded on the landing, navy blue silk I'd given her for her birthday. Next came a man's belt, then her shoes, then his. A trail of betrayal leading to our bedroom door. My phone was in my hand without conscious thought. I opened the camera, pressed record. Some part of me, the part that wasn't drowning in shock, knew I needed proof, evidence, something solid to hold on to when my world was dissolving around me. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, a sliver of warm light spilling into the hallway. I pushed it wider, the hinges mercifully silent. And there they were, on our bed, the bed I'd saved for 3 months to buy because Jennifer wanted one with a proper headboard. Her naked body was wrapped around his, her head thrown back in pleasure, I thought was reserved for me. The man's face was turned away, but I could see his hands on her skin, claiming territory I believed was mine alone. The world tilted sideways, my vision tunneled to that single scene, everything else fading to black. Around the edges, 15 years of marriage collapsed into that one tableau of betrayal. The weight of it bent my spine, crushed my lungs, stopped my heart for what felt like forever. I should have walked away. I should have turned my back. But the truth is, I couldn't. And what I did next will haunt every one of us forever. Time. Fractured. One moment I was frozen in the doorway, the next I was across the room, grabbing him by the shoulder and yanking him backward off my wife, off my bed. He tumbled to the floor with a startled yelp, all flailing limbs and confusion. "Mark!" Jennifer screamed, her voice piercing the air. She scrambled for the sheet, covering herself as if modesty mattered now. "Oh my God, you're not supposed to be home," she cried out in panic. "Not supposed to be home. Not. This isn't what it looks like. Not. I can explain. Just, you weren't supposed to catch me." The man, younger than me, I noticed, with a gym-sculpted body and carefully styled hair, tried to stand. My fist connected with his jaw before he made it halfway up. The impact traveled up my arm, pain blossoming in my knuckles. But I barely felt it through the adrenaline. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded, though it didn't really matter. He raised his hands defensively. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married," he stammered desperately. Another lie. Our bedroom walls were covered with photos. Our wedding portrait hung directly across from the bed. This man had f***ed my wife beneath my smiling face. I hit him again, and again. His nose crunched under my fist, blood spraying across the hardwood floor. Years of lifting patience had given me strength he wasn't expecting. He fell back, cowering now. "Please," he begged, blood bubbling between his lips. "Please stop." Jennifer was screaming, pulling at my arm. "Mark, stop it! You're going to kill him! Stop!" she pleaded frantically. Her touch burned like acid. I shook her off, and she stumbled back against the dresser, knocking items to the floor. Among them, I saw it. My paramedic belt knife. The one I used to cut seatbelts, clothing, anything that stood between me and saving a life. I kept it sharp enough to slice through denim with minimal pressure. I reached for it, the weight familiar in my palm. The room went silent except for our breathing. Mine controlled and deliberate, Jennifer's panicked, her lover's wet and gurgling through his broken nose. "Mark," Jennifer whispered, her eyes fixed on the knife. "Please, think about what you're doing." I looked at her, really looked. This woman I'd shared my life with for 15 years suddenly seemed like a stranger. In that moment, I saw all the lies behind her eyes, all the nights she'd welcomed me home while carrying another man's touch on her skin. "I am thinking," I said, my voice strange and distant to my own ears. "I'm thinking about loyalty, about vows, about respect." I turned to her lover, who was trying to crawl toward the door, leaving a trail of blood on our floor. I grabbed him by the hair, yanking him back. "Don't," he whimpered desperately. "Please don't. I'll never see her again. I swear to God." Jennifer was crying now, mascara streaking down her face. "It didn't mean anything, Mark. It was just physical. I love you. You know I love you," she sobbed. The rage that surged through me wasn't hot. It was ice-cold and calculating. Without hesitation, I grabbed the man's genitals with my left hand, and with my right, I made one decisive slash with the knife. His scream was inhuman. Jennifer's was worse. A high, thin sound of pure horror as she saw what I'd done. Blood pulsed from my eye, between his legs, darkening the floorboards beneath him. I held up the severed piece, still warm and twitching in my hand. "This," I said to Jennifer, my voice steady despite the chaos around us, "is what your affair is worth." She retched, turning away. The man had passed out, his body going into shock. The paramedic in me noted he wouldn't bleed out. I'd cut cleanly, avoiding the femoral artery. The husband in me didn't care if he lived or died. I walked calmly to our bathroom, Jennifer's pleading following me like a ghost. I dropped the flesh into the toilet and flushed, watching it disappear in a swirl of crimson. The symbolism wasn't lost on me, flushing away the very thing that had shattered my life. Back in the bedroom, Jennifer was on her phone, frantically, calling 911. She looked up at me, terror in her eyes. "What have you done?" she whispered in horror. "What have you done?" I sat on the edge of the bed, knife still in my hand, blood cooling on my skin. The rage had subsided, leaving only a hollow, certainty in its wake. "No," I corrected her firmly. "What have you done, Jennifer?" When the police finally knocked at my door, I didn't fight. I didn't run. I just opened it, blood still on my hands, and said calmly, "I did it." The police burst in with guns drawn, shouting commands that echoed off the walls of our once peaceful home. I knelt as instructed, hands behind my head, face pressed against the floorboard still warm with blood. The cuffs bit into my wrists, metal cold against skin that felt fevered and foreign. Jennifer stood in the hallway wrapped in a blanket, her body convulsing with sobs. He came home and... Oh God, there's so much blood," she stammered, between sobs. "Ma'am, please step back," an officer instructed her while his partner patted me down. Paramedics rushed past, colleagues I'd worked with just hours before. Dave, who'd shared countless midnight coffees with me during long shifts, wouldn't meet my eyes as he carried his trauma kit upstairs. I heard his professional voice asking assessment questions, felt the weight of his disbelief hanging in the air. "Jesus Christ!" came his shocked exclamation from our bedroom. As they led me to the police car, neighbors gathered on their lawns in bathrobes and slippers, faces illuminated by flashing red and blue lights. Mrs. Kelsey from next door clutched her chest in horror. The Robinsons whispered behind cupped hands. These people who'd waved to us at community barbecues now watched me shuffling toward a cruiser in handcuffs, my shirt soaked with another man's blood. At the station, they photographed me from every angle, cataloging blood spatter and defensive wounds on my knuckles. They took my clothes, handed me an orange jumpsuit that smelled of industrial detergent. Detective Ramirez, a stocky man with tired eyes, sat across from me in the interrogation room. "You want to tell me what happened tonight, Mr. Sullivan?" he asked. his voice neutral but gaze piercing. "I found my wife in bed with another man," I said flatly. "I cut off his banana with my paramedic knife." Ramirez didn't flinch. "Was this planned? Did you know about the affair before tonight?" he pressed. "No, I came home early." "Surprise," I replied. My laugh sounded hollow even to my own ears. "So this was spontaneous?" he continued. "Yes," I answered. "But you chose not to harm your wife," he observed. I looked at him directly. "My issue wasn't with her body. It was with his." He studied me for a long moment. "You're a paramedic. You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you?" "Knew how to ensure he wouldn't bleed out immediately," he stated. I didn't answer. "Didn't need to." "Where is the removed organ?" he asked carefully. "Flushed it," I replied simply. He sighed, scribbling notes. "Mr. Sullivan, you realize you're facing serious charges. Aggravated assault, mayhem, possibly attempted murder depending on the DA's mood," he warned. I nodded once. "You don't seem concerned," he observed. "Should I be more hysterical? Would that help my case?" I responded. "Most people in your situation show some remorse," he noted. "I'm not sorry," I said simply. "I'd do it again." I learned later that Jennifer's lover survived. James Whitaker, 36, pharmaceutical sales representative. We'd never met, but he'd been in my home at least 7 times over the past 3 months, according to Jennifer's eventual testimony. He underwent multiple surgeries but would never be the same. The irony that my medical training had ensured his survival wasn't lost on me. Jennifer filed for divorce 2 weeks after my arrest. Her statement to police painted her as a victim, trapped in a loveless marriage with a man whose work consumed him. She claimed I'd been emotionally distant, that she'd been lonely for years. Perhaps there was truth in that. But loneliness isn't betrayal. Loneliness doesn't justify turning our bed into a crime scene. My court-appointed attorney pushed for a plea deal, citing extreme emotional distress and my previously spotless record. The prosecution wasn't feeling generous. In the end, I accepted. 7 years for aggravated assault and criminal mayhem. The judge called my actions barbaric and a throwback to medieval justice. I remained impassive as the sentence was read. Jennifer sat in the courtroom during sentencing, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back severely from her face. She didn't speak, but her presence was statement enough. I wondered if she visited Whitaker in the hospital, if she held his hand while he learned to urinate through a tube. I wondered if it was worth it. As they led me away, Jennifer finally caught my eye. Something passed between us, not forgiveness, not even understanding. Just recognition of the wasteland we'd created together, her with her betrayal, me with my revenge. I didn't look back as the courtroom doors closed behind me. Our marriage had ended long before I walked into that bedroom. The only difference was now we both knew it, and that's how I traded my home for a cell. But here's the thing. Even behind bars, I sleep easier than I ever did next to her. Prison food tastes like cardboard soaked in salt water. The mattresses are thin enough to feel the metal frame beneath. At night, the cell block never truly quiets. Someone is always snoring, crying, or masturbating with desperate friction against sheets. Time stretches like taffy, sticky and formless. Days bleed into weeks, into months. I've been here 18 months now. My uniform is gray instead of the paramedic blue I wore for nearly 2 decades. My hands, once steady enough to thread IVs into collapsed veins, now callous differently from pushing mop buckets and lifting weights in the yard. The story of what I did traveled through these walls before I did. In prison hierarchy, my crime earned me an unusual position. Some men fear me, others respect me, most just leave me alone. "That's Sullivan," I've heard them whisper. "Cut off his wife's boyfriend's banana." The truth distorts with each telling, but the essence remains. I'm not a man to cross. I work in the prison library now. The irony isn't lost on me. surrounded by books like Jennifer once was. Sometimes I wonder if she kept the bookstore or if that too became collateral damage in our mutual destruction. I read more than I ever did when we were married. Dostoevsky, Camus, authors who understand something about crime and punishment, about actions and their weight. Jennifer visited once, 6 months after I arrived. She'd lost weight, her collarbones sharp beneath her blouse. We sat across from each other in the visitation room, surrounded by other broken relationships trying to navigate new boundaries. "I'm moving to Colorado," she told me quietly. "Fresh start?" I nodded. What was there to say? "I'm sorry," she offered finally. "Not for pressing charges, for before, for lying." "Are you still seeing him?" I asked, speaking my first words of our visit. She flinched. "No, he's recovering, in therapy," she answered hesitantly. "Physical or psychological?" I pressed. "Both," she replied. I nodded again. We sat in silence until a guard announced visiting hours were ending. As she stood to leave, she hesitated. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd just walked away that night? If you'd just filed for divorce like a normal person?" she asked. I looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman I'd once built my world around now seemed small and unfamiliar. "Every day," I admitted. "But I don't regret it. She never came back after that. I've lost everything that once defined me. My career, my home, my freedom, my wife. But, strangely, I've never felt more certain of who I am. There's clarity in consequences, in accepting the price of your actions without flinching. Sometimes at night, Jennifer's smile flashes in my memory. Not the woman I caught in our bed, but the bookseller who once recommended novels about second chances. In those moments, grief visits briefly, a ghost of what might have been. But it passes quickly, replaced by the hard truth that's become my anchor. Loyalty, once broken, cannot be repaired. I know what people think, that I'm a cautionary tale, a man who snapped, whose jealousy turned him monstrous. Maybe they're right. But from where I stand, every player in this story made their choice. Jennifer chose betrayal. Whitaker chose another man's wife. I chose revenge. I'm not the victim. Here, I'm the consequence. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.